I'll just have a quick introduction to Priya, and then I'll hand it over to you, Suresh.
Great.
So we also have Priya Karthik on the call with us. The session is all about communication. We communicate in various ways and means. It's not just verbal communication. We communicate through all the senses that nature has provided to us. And Priya is going to help us learn and articulate all of those senses. She's a communication and leadership expert with over 20 years of experience in providing professional training and development for students, executives, and entrepreneurs. Whether it's acing in business presentations, or improving productivity, or becoming a thought leader, Priya helps everyone around. And she's a resident of New Jersey. She loves music and hiking. So welcome, Priya.
Thank you for the beautiful introduction, Sandeep. It's a pleasure.
Welcome aboard. So Suresh, all over to you, and then we can get started.
Wonderful. Sandeep, so thank you. I wanted to kind of convey thanks on behalf of the board for the fantastic job you have done in putting together so many good teams. I took a peek at some of the plans. They look good, and I hope all of you do well. I wanted to convey my best wishes for all the teams. But Sandeep asked me to kind of give a few tips, because I kind of started this program, the university program, back in 2019. And I've actually accompanied some of the winning teams to Silicon Valley for the first 3 years, 19, 20, 21. So I have a little bit of experience as to what works, what does not work, and I thought maybe I can share that with you. So I'll just take a couple of minutes just to go over some of the highlights. So the first thing to keep in mind, I know all of you are students, so you have an academic orientation, which is great. I mean, I deal with a lot of students, so I know what it is. But for this competition, if you can just put on your practitioner hat, because that is I think the one distinction the TiE competition has compared to all the other things, similar academic conferences or startup pitches competitions that you take part in. So you may want to, the most important thing actually are two things. One is how well defined is your MVP. And before that, maybe I must also say that, are you solving a really pressing problem? Right? So I think you've got to focus on what is the problem you're trying to solve, how big it is, has it been validated by some parties, third parties, as well as with your customer discovery. Right? So if you can look at it, the problem, how big it is, has it been validated by a third party, has it been validated through your customer discovery? Spend some time explaining that piece, right? Before you get into the market size and billions of dollars, etc., that you show on your diagrams, make sure that this piece is very clearly laid out. Then you can jump onto the market size and go from there. But at the most fundamental level, I think the most important, I'm glad that Priya is here today, because I'm quite sure, without knowing what she's going to speak about, I'm going to maybe hazard a guess and say that she's going to talk a little bit about what I would like you to also emphasize, which is to tell your story in a way that you tell a story of any incident that was interesting to you. Right? So look at it from the point of view of a movie that you like, or a book that you like. Right? So it's got heroes, it's got villains, it's got ups and downs. So when you talk about your pitch, you've got to follow that nuances of what was the upside, what was the downside you went through, how did you come out of it, who was the hero, and who was the villain. So maybe let me ask this question to anybody in the audience who would like to maybe unmute and speak. Who would be the hero of your startup story? Anybody would like to hazard a guess there? Any guesses from the student startup teams?
I could give it a shot. I think.
Please do.
I would say it's our CTO. We brought on our So one of my co-founders and I are from a business background, but we brought on a CTO in December who's really pushed the business forward and has been our hero since he's joined the team.
Wonderful. Anybody else? Any other team has? Thanks,
I'm
Iman,
sure
for that.
they'll have an answer at the end of the session.
Yeah, I think Priya, you should you should give your answer later on.
No, I'm not giving my answer. I'll have to save the answer to the end.
Okay. Well, in the interest of time, I just wanted to maybe go ahead. So you're not wrong in that the founding teams are heroes, but remember, it is not the people who's narrating the story who should be the hero. It's always, in every case, try to make it the customer. Customer has to be the center of your story, and the hero, you're just helping them along by giving them the right tools, whatever it is in the form of an app, platform, whatever tools you're giving them, you're solving their problem. They are doing something profound, and you are helping them along the way. So I understand why you would think that maybe you or a CTO or a CFO, whatever, is the hero. But when you're telling the story in a pitch scenario, it always is the customer. So I would suggest you should start your pitch by talking about a customer problem and how you have helped solve it. Before you get into the nitty-gritty of how you're qualified to do it and all those nice things that you have in your pitch, talk about a specific customer situation, right? And talk about the customer zero. The first customer is all you're looking at. What was their problem? How did you solve it? And how did that help you? You looked into the problem. You found that it was a bigger problem. You did your customer discovery. And then, as you went through the whole customer discovery and validation process, the lean startup, you can use all the terminologies there and build your solution to solve the problem. And then you give examples of how you've done it. And you talk about all the other pitch decks that is there. But if you can start with this mindset of telling a story, I think that will change the equation and make you stand out. So I would encourage that. One final tip I have, in the academic setting, you have that business model canvas, right? You have those 9 boxes. I'm sure all of you can wake up in your sleep and talk about it. But the 2 most important the value prop box, which is basically, what do you do, how do you do it, etc., and the customer box, right? These 2 are the most important boxes that you need to spend time speaking about. All the other things, it is good to have there, and maybe you want to point out 1 or 2 things. For example, if you have a good partner, or if you have some revenue streams, etc., you can speak about it. But the most important box is, what are you doing? For whom are you going to do it? And what is the relationship between the value prop and the customer segments? If you can establish that upfront, and if you can tell it with the storytelling vibe that I just mentioned, I think you're off to a good start, right? And if you're off to that good start, then you're most likely going to engage the judges, and you're going to have a good 5-6 minutes pitch that you have time for. One final thing I want to add is, and I'm going this based on my experience with TiE at the TiECon event, be ready for giving a pitch in a few minutes, maybe 2-3 minutes, all the way up to 10 minutes. Reason being that in ideal scenario, you will have 10 minutes. But what often happens is that because of time crunch and many things happening, Murphy's Law, that is bound to happen in many cases. So when that happens, you really need to be able to crunch it down to a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, 2 minutes. So practice all those pitch modules. How do you crunch it down to 2 minutes, yet keep the essence of your pitch, right? And how do you do it for 5 minutes? How do you do it for 10 minutes? And involve, to the extent possible, multiple people in the team. If not everybody, maybe at least 2-3 people will have to be involved in some part of the pitch to make it kind of sound like a real startup team. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to Priya. She's going to give you a lot of great tips, and I'm sure she's going to add a tremendous value to what you're doing today. I have to leave, but I'm available if any team would like to connect with me before the pitch or after that. I'll be happy to spend some time doing so. Over to you, Priya. Good luck.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Suresh. Wonderful tips. And I'm sure I should tell you that you read my mind. So yeah, you were spot on many things. So thank you for sharing your expertise before. I think it was a beautiful warm up for them. And I'm just trying to reinforce what you just said in a more elaborate manner. That's exactly what I'm going to do.
Good luck, Priya.
So if you have any questions at any point, you can stop me, and I'm just going to start off. I'm also going to share a slide so that you can understand what I'm trying to say. I think the host disabled screen sharing here. So Sandeep, if you can enable screen sharing.
Okay, I think, sorry about, okay, there you go.
Okay, got it. Okay. Okay, are you able to see the screen? Okay, so the title for the session is the compelling startup pitch. So I'm sure that all of you are working on the pitches that you're planning to present for the competition. I'm just here to give you some basic tips on what to expect from the startup world. And from what I believe in, I'm not trying to prepare you for one small competition. I'm trying to prepare you for life. I'm envisioning you as future unicorns. So let us work towards becoming that unicorn, and what is something specific that we need to learn in order to stand out. So the first thing that I have seen in the past, I'm talking about a simple a small hair salon in a small university town. This is a true incident that happened. This hairstylist was Sam. He owned a walk-in hair salon in a small university town. And the salon was pretty popular, and the community, it was consistently busy. And very soon, a few youngsters realized that this is an excellent business opportunity, especially in a small town in such, and open another new walk-in salon in the same street. So Sam originally did not feel intimidated and was confident about his experience and his clients. And over a period of time, he could see that the new hair salon was getting more busy than him. And that is a point when he panicked. He ran a few specials, he tried many promotions, but somehow could not compete with the new salon. So he reached a point where you cannot take any more. And when I researched this scenario, I found that the new salon did something incredibly distinctive that attracted even the loyal customers of Sam. So what the salon did, to give a broad picture, the salon did something called pattern interrupt, broke the monotony, and created a unique value proposition for themselves that helped them stand out in that market. So this is the typical competitiveness of any business world. And the same thing holds good with the startup ecosystem as well. So when you look at statistics, what we find is every year, roughly approximately 1,500 startups get funded by venture capitalists in the US and 50,000 by angel investors. And when you're looking at these venture capitalists or angels, venture capitalists look at around 400 companies to invest on one, and angels look at around 40 to invest on one. And how to make into that one is what makes one startup stand out. Now, what is it that startup that stands out consists of? So in the last 20 years, what I have done is I've been helping entrepreneurs gain a competitive advantage, seeking whether it is funding, creating a presence, or bringing out innovative ways of finding success in their business using strategic communication techniques. So when you're looking at pitching, now the core focus is pitching in front of investors so that I'm able to win a competition or I'm able to get the money that I want. So when you're pitching in front of investors, what they're looking for is they're not looking at blindly looking at you, listening to you, and decide whether they want to invest. They assess your power of persuasion. So when I'm analyzing startup pitches, the first thing that I want to bring to your notice is there are certain common mistakes that bad pitches have that we need to be aware of so that we avoid the mistakes so that it is easier for us to stand out first. Now, what are the common mistakes? The first thing, as startup founders, we love our product or the service that we have created that we end up getting so caught up in the details of our product and service that we forget to explain our big picture. So what happens? This leaves the investors confused and unsure about what the startup is actually trying to achieve. And this is what I call as lack of clarity. Though we have created the product, we are not able to explain the big picture of the product or the service that we do in a very clear manner. The second problem is, as entrepreneurs, we are so passionate about our product and how we have created, we start using industry-specific jargon or buzzwords that may not be very familiar to the investors. So we need to be a lot more simple instead of using complicated vocabulary. And the moment we start using those jargons and complicated vocabulary, it comes as a major disconnect between you, the founder, and the investors. So we need to make sure that we are a lot more simpler in our communication. And thirdly, what happens is many entrepreneurs, especially the young ones, struggle to prove their credibility of bringing that mission or vision, whatever they have, into reality. So what investors are basically looking for in startups is not just how innovative they are, but are they capable of executing their vision? And when, as entrepreneurs, as startup founders, if we are not able to bring about that credibility, then we find it very difficult to gain the trust of investors. So with these three major mistakes that I have witnessed, if we are able to overcome these three problems, you already have an advantage over anybody else. Now, with this advantage, what is something I can do further to ace my pitch? Now, when you're looking at acing, it is just not having an advantage, but it is standing out and getting that nod from that investors. And today I'm going to share 3 tips that is going to help you have a perfect pitch. First of all, now I want you to think about listening in a typical pitch event. It could be a competition, it could be an actual event. And any pitch has a standard set of elements, just like how Suresh came up with today, with a lot of things. These are standardized set of elements. Start off with, okay, you explain your problem, a pain point, you provide a solution, you talk about your market opportunity, your business model, you talk about competition, you talk about your team, talk about financials, and finally ask for the money that you want to ask for. So this is a standard format. And this format, yes, it works. Now, imagine the plight of your investors or your audience and listening to, say, for example, 10 to 12 startup pitches in a competition or a pitch event, and every founder follows the same pattern. This leads to monotony. And all pitches sound the same. They end up having some brain drain, and they are no longer interested in listening to your pitch anymore because it is pretty monotonous. Now, what is something we can do to make our pitch memorable? So I'm going to give you the 3 tips that is going to make your pitch memorable. So first, you start off with a pitch. Now, how do you start with a pitch? There are many people who start off with, oh, I'm so-and-so, I'm the founder of XYZ, and I'm here to present my pitch, blah, blah, blah. The moment I start my pitch that way, you're already out of the game. Your pitch is not a presentation, but a performance. Just like how Suresh came up, I'm going to give the same example. Think about your favorite action movie. You like the movie because it started with some action and not with a bunch of titles. So I'm going to give you an example of a real pitch event that happened a few months back. I was at a pitch event and there were 8 founders passionately presenting their pitches. And out of the 8, only 1 stood out because they did something different. So this startup was a startup which provided a platform for integrated professional spaces with workforce solutions. So this was basically providing the infrastructure in rural areas. So the founder started the pitch with a simple, relatable story of how he was sitting in a small village in his living room on a vacation in India, where he had gone during the COVID time. And he just talked about the struggles he went through to work productively in a place that lacked workspace infrastructure. The moment this story went for approximately 2 to 3 minutes, he articulated it very well. And that simple story excited the investors because they could relate to the pain point of the customers. And research has shows that investors are more likely to invest in startups that tell a compelling story in the beginning. Your storytelling techniques and how you bring that pain point alive in front of your investors and audience, and how you convey your mission, vision, and impact through your story is what is going to make you stand out. So do not shy from being the performer in your startup pitch. Now, when we move on to the second point, whenever we are a founder, we have worked on our product and our service, we end up talking a lot about what we have done. Your pitch is not a monologue of your meticulous hours that you have spent in creating your product or a service. Have an open, confident conversation with your audience. Now, again, I'm talking about another pitch I remember vividly is from the founder of an online restaurant reservation app. So this app, which is very common, the founder started off with an open conversation with the audience. He asked, okay, now on the raise of hands, how many of you eat out during the weekend? And everybody raised naturally. And then he moved on to the question of out of whom, how many of you get frustrated when you have to wait for 2 hours to get your spot? Yes, naturally, everybody nodded. Everybody raised their hand. And then he asked, how many of you would use an app to do an advance booking and reach the restaurant at the exact time when your spot opened up? 100% of the audience raised their hand, and you won't believe the founder looked at the investors and said, these are my customers and probably the likely traction that I'm going to get. This simple, open conversation opened up the trust from the investors. Your charisma gains capital. Be that confident, enthusiastic speaker. Your body language, use your body language, use your tone, use your energy, which is going to greatly influence how investors perceive you and your business. It is not about listing a set of values that I add. It is about how I bring about in a charismatic manner. And again, research has shown that confident and enthusiastic presenters are more likely to get the nod from the investors than people who are dull and boring. So every time you speak, make sure that you have that open conversation. with your audience and use your charisma to your advantage. The next, the most important aspect is think about the great leaders. And we all talk about those great leaders and how they influence millions of people to follow their beliefs. And what we are trying to do in a startup pitch is we are trying to influence that single investor. That's it. Now, how did those great leaders transform people, influence millions of people, and how did they do it? Because they showcased passion for their cause. Every leader had a cause. And I tell you, your startup is born to solve a problem. And that is your cause. And speak up for your cause, your passion will automatically fall. You will see that you will start having an honest conversation with your audience. You will automatically become proactive in addressing potential concerns that investors might have. You automatically talk about the market competition. You talk about barriers to entry, regulatory hurdles. You automatically bring that in a passionate tone. Addressing anything with passion and addressing your potential concerns will automatically increase the trust and the confidence that investors have in your business. So your passion builds trust. These 3 tips is what is going to help you stand out. We talked about 3 mistakes that we want to avoid, and the 3 tips is going to help you stand out in any startup pitch. Now, when you are looking at a compelling startup pitch and what is it made of? Okay, at the moment I have these 3 tips and mistakes, am I automatically going to have a compelling pitch? We are going to discuss that a little more. I'm going to want to make it a lot more relatable to you, where I'm going to bring in examples from not so standard formats versus the standard formats. If you have any question right now, in between, you can always stop me. So now when you're looking at a compelling pitch, now what are the things that have in common? The first thing that we need to talk about, just like what Suresh also talked, there are many things we start off with we go into a problem, we go into the nitty-gritty details of our ask instead of focusing on the purpose. Your purpose is the most important aspect that your investors need to know. So focus on creating a clear and concise message that conveys your purpose. I would say the why right in the beginning. So this can be done in however way you want. It could be a compelling story that we talked about, or highlighting the real purpose, or using taglines, simple taglines and visual aids. Now I'm going to give you an example of what Airbnb did. This was a pitch deck of Airbnb in 2008 when they went for an angel round of the first 600K that they had raised. This was a slide 1. It was called Air Bed and Breakfast. Airbnb was not there at that point of time. And you immediately see a tagline which brings the purpose of the business. Book rooms with locals rather than hotels. So the moment people are able to read that, they understand the crux of the business. So this simple problem right on slide 1 is going to give you a better understanding of who you are as a business and as a founder. The next would be, naturally, we want to state the problem. Yes, we want to state a problem, and there is always a problem that you're trying to solve. And just like what Suresh said, yes, find out if it is valid, if it is validated at any point of time. Even when you are stating the problem, we need to create a illusion of how big the problem is. And that cannot be expressed too much in words, but it can be expressed only in imagery. So I'm going to give you an example of what Dropbox did in 2007. And this is the deck number 2, the pitch deck number 2, where they talked about the problem. You see them magnify the problem right there. looking at Dropbox, it is a cloud storage one. All of us are using it right now, but this is how they magnified the problem, and with a very strong picture. So make sure that you have your decks in such a way that you don't need to write essays in that, but instead use more pictures. Then the next, after the problem, what you go on is your solution. Your solution is going to help your customers solve the problem, and your customers is your hero, and your solution has to be magnified. So explain what is unique about the solution. Instead of talking about technical jargons, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing. Instead of over explaining what the solution is, talk about what is unique in your solution, what is innovative about your solution that sets your business apart. And while you're explaining that, make sure that you're straightforward, use simple language, avoid technical jargon, and make sure that you're able to bring in your product or your services unique value in the language your investors understand. The moment you're able to craft that message, your investors immediately follow what you're trying to bring in right there. And the next thing that we need to talk about solution is, most of us, we talk about the problem, the solution, then we immediately talk about the market and the financials and move on. But there is one thing more that you can add to make a pitch compelling. That is, give a sense of urgency, which is nothing but why now. The moment you are able to bring in and say that, hey, this is a solution, why the solution is important today, why it needs to be addressed, it gives a sense of urgency, motivates your investors to act sooner. The same thing, another examples of Dropbox, what they came up with, they started off with a problem. They immediately ended up with saying, why now? Why do I need to have a cloud-based storage today? They immediately explained that sense of urgency and how we need to capitalize on an untapped market. Then moment we move on, we talk about market opportunities. Yes, you talk about what your current market is, what is your target market, what is your growth potential, and what are the trends and what are the insights. Yes, you end up saying all that. But when you are doing that, make sure that you are able to paint a bigger picture to your investors. That bigger picture helps you in many ways. Let me give you an example of Uber. When they started off in 2008, it was your first round of funding that at the end, they got a 200K based on this pitch deck. So what they did was they put in those numbers, the bigger numbers, to give the investors an idea about how large the market is and how they can have the potential to be the unicorn at one point, which kind of excites investors in general. Then you move on to your business model. Yes, you need to talk about your basic model, how you are going to make your money, basic revenue streams, how you plan to scale your business. And if you already have some traction, if you are already doing something that has brought some traction, then you need to show how much your growth and how much your sales is based on what the traction is. So again, when you're talking about the Dropbox, they talked about what they are planning to do. They came up with 3 different versions of generating money and how they are planning to implement it in a long term. When you look at their pitch decks, they talk about long-term visions as well. The next, be thorough with your competitive landscape. You need to have a very clear understanding of who your competition is and how your product or your service fits into that competition. You need to easily able to spot on, identify what is your unique advantage, what are the barriers, what are the competitors have and what you do not have. And one word of caution I would say is, when you're talking about your competition, don't trash them so much. Be more, I would say, intelligent in using. So this is a simple competition deck that Airbnb came up with. They talked about, they did not really trash anybody. Okay, the competition is not doing that. Instead, they came up with a very realistic picture of where they stand, what are the others, where they are, and how lucrative they could be. And that would give a confidence in the minds of the audience, the customers, and the investors that you exactly know what your market is. Then, of course, your team. Talk about your team, talk about your experiences and qualification. Everybody does that. But what really struck me was the pitch deck of Tesla. When they did that, you could see when they were introducing the team, they had all the big names right there. They had MIT, they had Apple, they had Google. They brought in Toyota, they bought in Audi, because they had investors from all over the place. This simple slide will immediately gain the trust of investors that there is a big team from big places and they're capable of doing something great. So if at all possible, make those associations and the credibility stand out in your team slide. And last but not the least, the most important all of us will always include is the financials. The financials, come up with a clear plan. Yes, do your revenue projections. And the best thing before doing your financials, talk to an expert and find out if your financials are right. There are so many other things you can do on your own, especially with your financials. You need help. You need to talk to a seasoned investor, or you need to have a mentor whom you can trust and talk about if your projections are right. And when you're looking at a financial slides, if you are going to crowd your slide with too many numbers, people are not going to understand anything from it. So what I would suggest is use a lot of pie charts, graphs, and which is very evident. Use infographics rather than just plain text. And this is a simple financial slide of Shopify. They came up with simple slides when they came up with the comparison about what they would do at different set of years. Coming up with 3 to 5 year plans is going to give you an advantage. And last but not the least, come up with a clear call to action. Find out, tell openly what is something you want, whether you want an invitation to invest, what is the amount that you need. And you can also go to an extent of how you're planning to use that funding and what are your goals that you're trying to achieve by that fund, so that you are able to gain the trust of your investors. Now, moment you are able to put all this into use, you are able to communicate to your investors, to your audience, to your customers, that you exactly know what you're doing. And as an entrepreneur, your USP is your sense of innovation. It's not just a sense of innovation, but also your attitude to not give up. And each and every time you present a pitch, you get better with presenting, and make sure that you perform, make sure that you use your charisma, and make sure that you build the trust of your investors. And as entrepreneurs, you never give up. And it is pretty hard to beat a person who never gives up. So I wish you all the luck. And any doubts, any question that you have, I'll be happy to answer and provide you with a competitive advantage. You can always contact me on LinkedIn or at any place. I'm accessible on LinkedIn, and I will be happy to help you with it.
Thank you, Neetu. I think this has been a fantastic presentation. I'm sure the founders here on the call definitely learned a lot from it. I've spent 20 years in the industry, and I can bet you, if I had this piece of advice 20 years ago, my career graph would have been totally different. So not that I still have, I think, 20 years left within me, and this is going to help me personally too. So fantastic. Thank you so much for taking time out to share such great piece of advice, and so basic, but yet so effective and strong information that will help our founders stand apart. I'll open up for questions to the folks who are on the call. And if there are any questions, any clarifications they seek, Priya is available to answer your questions. So go ahead. Unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hello, Priya. My name is Tyler.
Hi.
So I'm with a team called Exercise Power, and we are developing like a new technology. So it's kind of like deep tech. It's sort of very new stuff. I was just wondering if you had any advice regarding how to approach a pitch deck for this sort of product.
So if you have any specific questions, I mean, naturally you have probably you would be having a pitch deck already lined up in front of you. And if you have any questions specific to how the pitch deck goes, I gave you an overall compelling pitch deck. What are the ingredients we need to have? If you have any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer with that.
Yeah, like I guess the main thing I was wondering was when you talked about the beginning of the pitch and telling a story. And like, okay, how that guy was like in a shop and he recognized this problem. Like, how do you think someone would approach that if they were making like a new energy device, basically? Like, there's not really like it's like sort of, I guess, a more obvious thing. I was thinking of asking the crowd like whose phone has died, or like, have you ever, been super mad when XYZ ran out of power and something like that?
So when you're talking about the story, I would go in more in the form of self-introspection about how this whole idea popped up in your head, right? Remember, I talked to you about the story that one of the startup founders, it was actual pain point that he experienced that came out as a story. And the other with the whole energy bank, when Tesla was, you have the whole introduction of Tesla Energy. When Elon Musk introduced it, he talked about how the world is on fire and how the carbon monoxide is increasing so much. He made the whole problem the biggest villain of all times. And then he immediately introduced the solution. Before introducing the solution, he talked about how the natural sun is helping us. And then he moved on to the solution. So
Okay.
these kind of, because you said the energy bank, I immediately remembered Elon Musk's presentation on Tesla Energy. Mm-hmm. So when you are able to think about the problem and how the problem affects the customer, and that way you are able to identify what you need to be communicating in front of the investors.
Okay. Do you think like something I was considering doing was sort of like mentioning a conversation I had with a U.S. Navy director at ARPA-E convention, and sort of he gave me this statistic about energy requirements in his work, and like I was sort of thinking maybe I can use this statistic to say like, look, this is from a reputable source, like sort of package that all in.
Yeah. So statistics do help, and especially when you're having a statistic, make sure that instead of just stating the statistic, if you're able to get a graph, if you're able to show some curve on this deck, okay, that will add a lot more credibility instead of just stating a statistic as such.
All right, thank you. I appreciate all your comments. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, I think there are any more questions? I see a few people have dropped out. If everyone is okay, if you want to show your face, we will just take a picture. If not, that is fine. Just let me know if you want to just switch on your cameras for 30 seconds. Okay, I would like to see a face, not just a wall.
Yeah, this is the wrong camera. All right, I'll just go over here. I have like a multi thing set up. It's not working. Here's me.
And this is Tyler. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Great to I think we'll just end the webinar now. Priya, thank you so much for your time. This has been very helpful. Totally appreciate it. And looking forward to having such more sessions with you as we move along with the founders of New Jersey and hopefully with other global founders too. So thank you everyone for participating. Thank you, Priya. Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Right.
having me. Yeah. Thank you for organizing, Neetu and Sandeep.
Bye.